Good morning, you beautiful people of Atlanta. As my co-host, Mr. Benjamin Earley, always says, my name is Ebony Ford, and I am a proud Westside Atlanta resident, English Avenue. Appreciate y'all being here this morning. We want to welcome you to Westside Future Fund's 41st Virtual Transform Westside Summit. We in this thing. We've been bringing y'all the news you can use even during this ongoing pandemic, and we are still here today. We have an awesome, I'm biased, okay? I think all of our summits are spectacular, but this one today, this is going down in the history books, okay? So I'm very glad y'all are here to watch this. You do not want to miss it. However, I don't want to spoil the surprise. We have a little more information about that a little bit later. Stay tuned. For right now, I would like to wish everyone a very happy Women's History Month. I am a little bit ashamed to admit that I didn't really know that March was Women's History Month, but it's okay. That's what we're here for, and I'm gonna learn today. So appreciate y'all being here to learn with us. So Women's History Month, quote unquote, started out as a week in 1980. Now, I could be biased with this as well, but 1 week is certainly not enough time to celebrate women, you know what I'm saying? So that's just my opinion. So it wasn't until 1987 that then President Reagan turned it into a month. Not quite long enough either, but you know what? I'll take that. Thank you, thank you. So this year, the theme for Women's History Month is Women Providing Healing and Promoting Hope, which is something that women pretty much do all the time, 365 days of every year, but we're celebrating it especially this year, which according to the National Women's History Alliance, is both a tribute to the ceaseless work of caregivers and frontline workers during this ongoing pandemic, and it's also a recognition of the thousands of ways that women of all cultures have provided both healing and hope throughout history. So if you haven't celebrated your women this year, now's the time, all right? Yeah.
Great intro, co-host. We appreciate
you. Thank you.
Again, welcome to the 41st Virtual Transform Westside Summit. Hello, good morning, and what's good, you beautiful people of Atlanta's Westside, and to those joining us for the very first time. My name is Benjamin Earley, and it is truly a privilege to be a part of today's program, as today's conversation will feature latest updates from Rodney Cook Senior Park, as well as the revitalization effort to create a community that Dr. King would be proud to call home. Absolutely. On Atlanta's Westside, featuring none other than the great Ambassador Andrew Young, who has done so much to contribute to not only Black equality, but he is truly a U.S. treasure, and we appreciate his presence here today. Absolutely. And, you know, we got a few gift cards that I know we're going to be giving away today.
We certainly do. First of all, I do want to put up our mission slide. Yeah. Anyone, like Mr. Benjamin Earley said, that's new to Westside Future Fund, our vision mission here is to always try to create a community that Dr. King would be proud to call home. And we do that with the help of our board of directors. Now, these community leaders are not paid for their service that they give us here on the West Side at Westside Future Fund, so we are especially grateful for the work that they do to bring our mission and values home. We also have a dedicated Westside Future Fund team. A couple of them are here actually helping with the summit today. So we are very grateful for our board of directors and our direct Westside Future Fund team to help bring, again, our vision to life. And we also do, as Benjamin mentioned, we are giving away a Home Depot Foundation gift card today, and also a Goodwill of North Georgia gift card. And the way that you can put your name in the box to be drawn for that, to have a chance of winning that, go to our website, westsidefuturefund.org. Click on Event Spotlight from the homepage, and then RSVP. Put your name in there by 8:15 to be entered into that drawing.
Absolutely. That being said, it's time to get connected, folks. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Be sure to connect with us. Help us share this vital information that is always useful to the Westside community in Atlanta at large. The only way that we can make sure that people are actually benefiting from this information is if more people are exposed to it. So help us in sharing this, tremendous program that we got going this morning. Click the like button, click the subscribe button, follow our channels, and give us a nice morning greeting in the comment section below. Just let us know how thrilled you are to be alive and well on this beautiful Friday morning as we celebrate the beginning of Women's History Month, as well as today's special occasion in celebration of 90 years of service. Woo. 90 years of service for this young man, Ambassador Andrew Young.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you. A round of applause. Absolutely. All right. So typically we would do a devotion, but since we want to leave a little bit more time for today's featured panel, we wanted to take some of that time back from the devotion. Anybody who is familiar with the Transform Westside Summit knows that right about now, we would have somebody come up and they would usually be speaking from the book of Nehemiah in the Bible. and relating that story to the revitalization effort happening here on Atlanta's historic West Side with regards to everybody that's contributing to make the revitalization happening here an equitable one for all residents, legacy residents especially included. And this is a largely African-American community. And there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of unease right now about the different developments that are happening on the West Side and throughout Atlanta in general, with gentrification providing several opportunities for people to be displaced. Yeah. There's a lot of, like I said, fear regarding legacy residents being pushed out of homes that they've come to love and neighborhoods that they know and love. And what we do at Westside Future Fund is help to combat some of that displacement. And we do that through affordable housing mainly. The Home on the West Side program from Westside Future Fund is a program that anchors legacy residents of the historic West Side neighborhoods to be able to have an economic floor that they can depend on, to have high quality affordable housing thanks to partnerships with philanthropic partners as well as partners from the private sector, as well as the city of Atlanta. And there are several other aspects to these programs that basically benefit people who are from these areas so that they don't have to worry about being displaced as new developments continue to happen and as property values continue to rise. Instead, they have an opportunity to benefit economically from these opportunities that are coming to their neighborhoods. So if you want to learn more about the Home on the West Side program, again, visit westsidefuturefund.org/Home on the West Side. There's also a program called the Anti-Displacement Tax Fund, which also focuses on legacy residents who are already homeowners, who are concerned about the increase in property taxes that are happening thanks to new developments happening on the West Side and overall property values increasing. It's no secret that rent is going up in Atlanta, so as a way to combat largely African-American communities from being converted into not that, we are looking to make it an equitable transition so that everybody who is moving to the community can benefit from these developments that are happening, but also the people who have been used to calling these communities home can continue to do that while thriving in the new economic environment. So again, learn more about these programs at westsidefuturefund.org.
Yes, and I can certainly attest to the Anti-Displacement Tax Fund portion of the Home on the West Side program, as I was a homeowner. And I applied to have my taxes for the next 20 years. The increase in my taxes paid for by the Westside Future Fund, so I'm actually a recipient of this program, of this awesome program. And that's actually how I got started working with Westside Future Fund, so I can attest, please, like Benjamin said, westsidefuturefund.org/Home
on the West Side.
Check it out.
You got it. All right, and before we get to our featured panel today, wanted to introduce a quick video, but before we do that, again, introducing our guest. So we are featuring today Mr. Rodney Cook Jr. He is the founder of the National Monuments Foundation and a renowned Atlantan. You'll know his name from the namesake of his father, Rodney Cook Sr., after whom the park in Vine City is named. We'll be speaking with him today, and we're honored to be speaking with Ambassador Andrew Young, who was the first African American to be appointed as the ambassador to the United Nations by a president of the United States who he was integral in helping to elect President James Carter. He was the second African American to serve as mayor of Atlanta, only preceded by Maynard Jackson. He was the first African American since Reconstruction to be elected to represent the state of Georgia in the United States Congress. He led the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and served alongside several iconic figures such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Coretta Scott King, Rosa Parks, Joseph Lowery, the Honorable John Lewis, so many others who gave literally their blood, sweat, and tears to help provide a new and better way forward for the United States of America by abolishing Jim Crow in the South and helping to win voting rights for African Americans with the passage of the 1965 Civil Rights Act. He's literally led a life, an entire life of advocacy for the poor, advocacy for the disenfranchised, and he continues that work even today through his foundation, the Andrew J. Young Foundation. It is truly, truly, truly a privilege to be a part of today's program. Like my co-host said, every one of these summits is special. But today, being a black man, today witnessing so many movements that have been happening lately as far as Black Lives Matter, as far as, seeing the different uprisings from people who just frankly have had it with the discrimination that we're continuing to see today. But understanding that there was a foreground laid by such people as Ambassador Andrew Young, there was a blueprint laid for various aspects of how we can combat today's problems by looking back through history and seeing how those victories were won, thanks to the efforts of people like today's guest, Ambassador Andrew Young. So with that being said, I do want to introduce a video from our new and current mayor, Andre Dickens. Mayor Andre Dickens, we appreciate you for putting this video together. And we appreciate you for also being part of the summit. If you were watching a few weeks ago, we had we had Mayor Andre Dickens come, and he was a part of one of our previous summits. But he's put together a nice video talking about the Peace Walk, and we'll get to that video now. Enjoy.
I am so blessed to live in and now get to lead one of the greatest cities in the world. I am Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, and I get to live my dream every day. I get to call the cradle of the civil rights movement my home. And even better, I am sharing this space with one of my personal heroes, Ambassador Andy Young. We're kicking off Ambassador Young's 90th birthday celebration with a Peace and Reconciliation Walk, and we want you to join us. This 90-minute walk starts at Centennial Olympic Park at 10 a.m. on Thursday, March 10th. The walk ends at the Rodney Cook Jr. Peace Park, where the Andrew Young statue will be unveiled. Please join Ambassador Young, government leaders, international guests, and a host of others as we come together to celebrate this living legend. It's free to participate, and groups are welcome. Just go to andrewyoung90.com to register.
All right, good morning. We're, back live at our Transform Westside Summit. I'm John Ahmann. I'm the president and CEO of the Westside Future Fund, and I'm really excited about our special guest this morning. Ambassador Cook and Rodney Young, or I'm not Rodney, Rodney Cook. Sorry about that, but I know you all kind of brothers. So, and we're still. Virtual because of COVID. I think we're anticipating 2 weeks from now to be back in person with the great improvements in the COVID situation. But today, with Ambassador Young's 90th birthday coming up, we're very excited to talk about his 90th birthday. We're also going to be talking about great new park in Vine City, the Rodney Cook Historic Parks. We'll be learning more about that and all that what it is now and what's to come and how it got here today. And so on the occasion of, the ambassador's 90th birthday, we're just going to have a Q&A for about the next 50 minutes or so till we, reach the end of our broadcast. And I'm going to start giving us the ambassador's 90th birthday starting, I think, next week, and start with something maybe you've been reflecting about, but just to, because I know there are a lot of activities planned for your birthday week, Ambassador, and maybe especially for all our viewers who may want to get plugged into what's happening next week. We just showed the video of Mayor Dickens talking about the Peace Walk, which is, I know, something I think was your inspiration. But first question, just tell us a little bit about your birthday week next week.
Well, I've never made much fuss over birthdays. I'm a fan of Satchel Paige, the baseball player. When they asked him about how old he was, he said, age ain't nothing but a number, and if you don't mind, it don't matter. And it's hard for me to conceive of, I mean, I can't even conceive of 90 in relationship to me, because I don't, well, I knock on wood, but you know, nothing's really hurting. I have this scooter because I've done great damage to my knees, and I've been chicken about getting knee transplants. Not because I worry about the surgery, but after I got in my 70s, I was afraid of anesthesia. I'd been very active with the Alzheimer's program out at Emory, and I had a lot of friends who were younger than me who began to show signs, and I didn't like that, and yet nobody knows what to do about it. So I didn't want to do anything to do me any harm. And so I tried to keep as normal a life as possible, and I was able to do that thanks to the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA on Campbellton Road, and the fact that before our traffic got so heavy, I'd ride my bicycle all over town.
Yes, sir.
And it's a little too dangerous now for me. And so my legs need help. But again, the birthday was an idea of my foundation. And I said that, look, I don't want anything much to do with it. You all plan it. Because I had decided when we formed the foundation, and I was just about 75, that I didn't see a foundation continuing in perpetuity, because normally those kinds of foundations depend on the person in whose name they flourish to leave a lot of money. And the one thing I've never been able to do, and never really been anxious to do, is make a lot of money. That I probably could have, but with Martin Luther King, the salary was $6,000 a year. The 8 years I was mayor, I made $50,000 a year. I think our sanitation workers make more than that now, which I helped to raise. And our water workers certainly do, and policemen certainly do. And but I didn't get a pension and didn't have any health insurance, so I was fortunate to have been married to two school teachers, both of whom had master's degrees, and both of whom came out of the Atlanta public school system with good health insurance. So I've been blessed, haven't needed anything seriously, but again, I said that you all plan it, and my job is just to make it to 90. Well, it looks like I'm gonna make it next week. And
Please.
I think that looking at what's happened, peace and reconciliation is more necessary now in the United States of America and in the world than maybe any time since I've been, I've never known the United States to be quite as divided. And there was a time when I was in Congress when I had as many Republican friends as I had Democrat friends. And I think that's been true all my life. In fact, when I came to Georgia, I voted Republican. And I voted for Eisenhower in 56. And When I went to New York, again, there was Rockefeller and Lindsay, and I voted Republican in New York. So that I've never been a party man, except when it becomes absolutely necessary, as I think it has now. And I don't want to cast any judgment, but we're in the process of pulling our country back together. And I don't think it's been so divided. I've never known the Congress not to have any votes crossing over.
Yes, sir.
On any issue. And yet now that seems to be the case. And I would just as soon sit on the Republican side as the Democrat side. Or back in the cloakroom, the Republicans were from Texas and Louisiana and places where I was comfortable. And when they'd come back from vacation, they'd usually have the best jokes. There were also more Republicans going to the prayer breakfast on Wednesday mornings. And so I was in an integrated Congress. That doesn't seem to exist right now, and I hope we can find a way to get that back together.
Well, that's kind of remarkable hearing from you. I know historically, I'm definitely not a teacher, so I might have this history wrong, but it was up until John F. Kennedy that the African community majority voted Republican because of Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation, and then...
Well, that's what we would call the black and tan Republican Party.
And I think I read back to some of the history I know you've been a part of, is that when Kennedy was running against Nixon, it was some of the outreach that the Kennedy administration did to Martin Luther King while he was in jail. I think I've heard that, because that was the first time.
Well, that's a wonderful story, because the gentleman who was responsible for the phone call to Mrs. King was from Pennsylvania. His name was Harris Warford.
Yes, sir.
And he in himself is an interesting guy, because he's from a wealthy Quaker family in Pennsylvania. And when he was 12 years old, he met Gandhi when his grandmother took him on an around-the-world trip. And he met Gandhi in India. And he was so impressed, he started reading about Gandhi. And when Indian independence came, he almost single-handedly went to all of his wealthy friends and arranged that 12 black college presidents, of which Dr. Mays was one, and a number from here were part of that group. My college, I was at Dillard University in '47. In New Orleans, the president of Dillard went, the president of Howard University went. And they all came back talking about Mohandas K. Gandhi. And that was the introduction of nonviolent social change into the black community. It came in at the collegiate level, and the students picked it up in the late 50s and 60s. And that's been one of the success stories of the historically black colleges, because it was, it was not, I mean, I grew up in the Second World War, and I was always playing gunfighting. I mean, we played war, because that's, I mean, in elementary school, I was making airplanes in the shop so that we could learn how to identify the difference between a B-38 and a Nazi plane. And we made the planes so that we could distinguish them. But now I think if we're going to survive, we're going to have to get together. The events last night and yesterday, whether it was accidental or on purpose, it doesn't make much difference. When you start having a war around a nuclear reactor, that's not only dangerous in Ukraine, that's dangerous going to Russia, and it's dangerous if the winds decide to go to Britain, or come on around the United States. And so it's as dangerous a time as I think I've ever lived in. And maybe it's because it's new and we haven't adjusted to it yet. But right now, I put my hope in the Ukrainian people and the Russian people. When we had the Olympics here, we invited a lot of Russian citizens. They were mostly from Soviet Georgia, here on the Friendship Force, and there were 3,000 Atlantans that went to Russia. Right. We've been a very aggressive city all along, trying to be peacemakers. The Friendship Force literally took tens of thousands of people to meet with countries around the world where there was difficulty and where we were
Right.
had potential clashes. And that came out of the Carter administration. And we kind of need something like that today. But that's why the march, well, first we start, I guess it's Wednesday, the 9th. And I wanted to start with prayer. And the church that I've attended since I've been in Atlanta is First Congregational Church on Cortland and John Wesley Dobbs. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, I wanted as many people as could make it to come, and let's start the weekend with a prayer service. And my pastor, Dwight Andrews, is organizing that, and I don't know who's invited, who's praying, or what they'll expect me to say, but you know, the Lord speaks in many strange ways, and if we're silent, the rocks will cry out. But I wanted to start with prayer, and then the second day, a march for peace and reconciliation. And that would be from Centennial Park, and it would be just 1.5 miles to Rodney Cook Sr. Park on, well, it's Joseph E. Boone, 1 block west of Northside Drive. And then Rodney is, almost to my surprise, I've been working on this peace park with Rodney for, I don't know how many years now, but
10.
It was a big...
Yeah, and for folks that don't know the history, because tell us what was there before the park.
Yeah, the park was a big hole, mud hole, defecation hole. And the bishop who spoke at the dedication of the park remembered, you know, this hole having 20, 30 feet of sludge right in the middle of town. And it's at the bottom of a hill coming off Sunset, and we needed a lake there.
Right. And it's a great tee-up, because I know it was actually, previously were homes in Vine City in that park, and it was actually, I think while Shirley was mayor, that there was a big stormwater event that raised a bunch of hazardous sewage, and they had to relocate everyone, and it sat fallow for many years. But I know with y'all's vision, I want to come back to hear more about it, but we have about y'all ready? We showed the one minute video so about Cook Park. So we'll show what it looks like today, but then we can come back from the video and talk a little bit more about how it came together.
It's it's one of the most beautiful parks I've ever been in.
We got about a minute. Rodney sent over yesterday. We got about a minute or so video we're going to show so viewers can see and hopefully be inspired to come on the Peace Walk and see to it. So let's roll the video, guys, if we could.
It's good to see everyone here as we informally gather to honor a great Georgia peacemaker, Congressman John Lewis and his wife Lillian, Ambassador Andrew Young and his wife Jean, Rodney and I all work together to keep this city and state peaceful during one of the most turbulent periods of American history. It was hard work. We suffered kidnapping threats, bombings, Ku Klux Klan, cross burnings, worse. But we all worked together to keep the Atlanta way alive. 60 years later, we find ourselves again in a most difficult position. A turbulent period. We must look to and emulate the extraordinary examples of peace leaders like John exemplified, and Andy still exemplifies to heal our nation again. I'm still very thankful that Andy Cook Jr with my side, the monumental symbolic component of this peace park. I look forward to Mayor Bottom's official park opening soon. May this great work and the 17 others to come to this park be an inspiration for generations that we in Georgia stand for peace. Hear, hear. Hey, that's beautiful.
It's one thing about singing in a black church. The key is insignificant. The rhythm is what counts, and the joy. And by and large, it's one of those old spirituals that people turn to when everything seemed to be going wrong. They started singing, I've got a feeling everything's gonna be all right. I've got a feeling everything's gonna be all right. Well, I've got a feeling everything's gonna be all right. Be all right, be all right, be all right.
The National Monuments Foundation, inspiring the future through history.
Well,
so, John, if I could give you a
Sure.
little update on that. That was my 95-year-old mother with Andy and
Wow.
Mayor Bottoms, and she and Andy are also old friends, and she's, like he has, seen it all and done it all. And so that was the dedication of the John Lewis statue that we did last spring. And so she was agreeable to come out. Andy actually, she had gotten COVID.
right.
And Andy had said, your mother does these speeches for you, and you tell her to concentrate on the speech I need her to make with me and Keisha and dedicating the statue of John. That's what saved her from Delta COVID at 95. So Andy essentially saved her life.
Wow.
She made that speech.
Well, that's an amazing.
Well, Rodney and I started, Rodney was about 13 or 14 when I first ran for Congress in 1970.
And a lot of people don't know, I've heard it, but how you knew his father and what his father...
Well, in 70, I ran against Fletcher Thompson and lost, but he was with me. And he was a part of a group of, the district back then was 32% black. And it was almost impossible for someone to win the 5th Congressional District with an all one race campaign. Rodney was part of that group of young people from the North Side, but also from Georgia State and Georgia Tech and the Atlanta University Center that came together. And I think even though I lost in 70, in 72, I was able to win because there was a slight reapportionment and the district went up to 38%.
And you need to tell
Black.
the part about me volunteering for you.
Well, he
And
had
if you
volunteered
can you
for
find
me.
that picture of Dad and Andy? It's probably about slide 10 or so, the two of them debating together. Put it on the screen for us.
But I had known Rodney's father because when there was a wall built to keep us from moving into Cascade, Rodney was one of 2 city councilmen to vote against it. They both, again,
One of 2 out of the,
2 out of, it was just 9 then, I think.
and that was, at that time, what people don't appreciate, that could have been a life-threatening vote, right?
Well, it was. It was a difficult vote because, well, neighborhoods, my neighborhood, Cascade, people just started getting a little too old for their homes. And the home that I bought in 1966 for $32,000, where I still live, was blocked off so that I couldn't just go straight down Peyton Road into my home. And Rodney's father and Federal, who became
Richard Freeman.
Richard Freeman became a
Freeman.
judge, were the only 2 council members to vote against the wall. Well, we finally picketed it and it came down and opened up that neighborhood. But when I moved into that neighborhood in 1966, there were only 3 black families on that street.
Wow.
And my daughter, my children, there were about 10 black students at Southwest High School. By the time they graduated 4 years later, there were only 10 white students in Southwest High School. And so that neighborhood switched so quickly. And when people ask why, I look at the family that I bought my home from. And they had lived there for 10, 15 years. They had 3 children, and the basement had a mother-in-law suite. The 3 children went away to school or moved, and the mother-in-law died. So you had 2 people in a 5-bedroom home. And they were ready to move somewhere else. Now, was that race? Maybe. But it was also events in their lives that had nothing to do with race or the economy. But we saw how quickly that neighborhood changed. Now it's happening the other way. The only difference is that the houses now, instead of selling for $31,000, are selling for $300,000 to $400,000. But they're the same houses.
Yep.
And they could have been fixed up by my neighbor's children, or by my children, but I don't know why none of my children wanted to stay in Southwest Atlanta. Now my grandchildren are coming back to Southwest Atlanta. And my granddaughter suddenly realized that we had 3 pretty good schools, and that she could pay a little more for a house if she took an interest in and made sure that those schools were up to snuff. And when I was mayor, we had, between Frederick Douglass and Benjamin Mays, we had 13 scholarships from Notre Dame that took students straight from there. We had, I think, 7 from MIT, but those students were getting selected by the best schools in the country. So they were good schools, and they still are potentially good schools. But I think that's, well, one of them is now named for my first wife, Jean Childs Young.
That's right.
And my family tries to take, we should take more interest, but they were there yesterday. And my son said he was really disappointed at how depressed the students seemed. That they said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. That there was no vim and vitality in that school. Well, that's sort of our responsibility. We have to take more interest in those schools in that neighborhood. I remember on John F. Kennedy Middle School, I remember when we had the 100 Black Men had Saturday morning workshops on careers, on lifestyle. We had about 5 workshops that we put middle school students through. And in order for the school to stay top flight, the community at large has to maintain an interest. The businesses in the neighborhood have to maintain an interest in the schools. And we've had that in Atlanta, and that's the reason I think we've had such good public schools.
Yes, sir.
And Ambassador, when you first ran, my father admired Andy so much, he had me volunteer for his campaign. And so I'd walk a mile to get the bus and ride down to his campaign, Peachtree Battle, that one. And I'd lick stamps and get coffee. Andy pretends he remembers me being there. I was about, 13, Andy, 12?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. But the second go-round, Andy did not win that one. And the second go-round, if you could pull that up again, Dad's career and Andy's compelled the 2 of them to run for the same seat. Dad didn't think he was going to do that. And so what is the image behind us is the way that campaign worked. And here are 2 friends debating that are at different sides of the pole. But that didn't matter. It's the Atlanta way. It's the way it's the way Bo was raised by Andy, and it's the way I was raised by my dad. And our friendship, Bo's and mine, is a testimony to that friendship right there. And so Andy won. And the voters chose. If you could, go to you can see Andy at a podium at my dad's funeral. And so when Dad died 40 years later, he instructed me, if you can find out if Ambassador Young, if his knees are good, if he wouldn't mind speaking at my funeral and deliver the eulogy.
We became friends. And I think that was one of the things about Atlanta politics that I've always liked. That every time I've run against somebody, I'm a better friend of them after the campaign win or lose. I lost to Zell Miller running for governor, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me and Georgia, because I lost in the primary. But before I lost, Zell Miller and I both agreed that we wanted the lottery funds to go into the Hope Scholarship, and that they should be designated just to education.
Right.
And Zell Miller said, well, what about child care? I said, that's education, but higher education and child care. Losing that election was probably one of the best things that happened to me and Georgia, because I doubt that I was close enough to members of the state legislature so that if I had won, I could have convinced them to put all of the money from the Hope Scholarship in education. As a result of that, we now have almost 500,000 college students in Georgia.
Yeah.
And 350,000, some thousand, in the state university system, and there's at least another 200,000 in the private higher education system. So that election, by losing it, I helped to transform Georgia. And Zell Miller and I became very good friends with, and Zell and John Lewis
Right.
remain very good friends. And that's the good thing about Georgia politics,
Right.
and Atlanta politics, that we've tried to keep it free of rancor and hostility,
Well,
with some success.
well, one thing, and I want to make sure we hit it, because I know, Rodney, you wanted to talk about how y'all's friendship, led to the park. If you want to maybe say a little bit about that.
Sure. There's an old image, black and white. Maybe it's about 2 or 3 on there, if you can find that. Yeah, that's the first map of the city that was done by an ancestor of mine, Mayor John Mims, but I think it's after that.
And that was a lot of your inspiration, right? For you
Yeah,
personally,
there you
Rodney,
go.
was your family had imagined that. That's
Say that again?
I mean, for you personally, that was a major touchstone for you, that your relatives had imagined the park.
Yes, they built it in the 1890s.
Right.
It was the first integrated park in the city system. And it was a thing that Dad told me to put back. And then he died. And so you have a father telling you to do such a thing, you just get it done until it's done. And this was Olmsted Brothers, and essentially the father of American horticulture. He did Central Park in New York, the U.S. Capitol grounds, and here he did Piedmont Park, the Druid Hills community, a few things like that. And Asa Candler had done the Druid Hills part with them, right. And he was friends with Livingston Mims, who said, well, let me talk to your guys and let's do this other park here. And so the fountains were added after he died. Livingston Mims died in 1906, and Sue, his widow, built those. She also did the Sidney Lanier Monument in Piedmont Park. And those were the first pools for all of the children of the city to swim right. together. This was, again, 60 years before the Civil Rights Act. So it's a thing that Mayor Reed was very generous to give us this property that Andy was describing earlier. And it's adjacent because the school is still there. And there's Andy at the groundbreaking.
Right.
And so the park, with the extraordinary assistance of the Trust for Public Land and the city parks and watershed departments, has built one of the most astonishing parks in the world, really. It's an engineering marvel. It is, and that's a great tip, because we have like a 1 minute. Y'all ready for that other park video, the 1 minute one or so? Because to your point, and it's a green infrastructure park, already award winning, so we're going to show the other video so viewers can see the full. So we'll roll that video and come right back.
Rodney Cook Sr. Park is more than a green oasis in Atlanta's historic Vine City neighborhood. The well-appointed 16-acre park also acts as a flood control system for the neighborhood. The park, developed in partnership with the Trust for Public Land, has a 2-acre detention pond that can capture up to 10 million gallons of stormwater runoff. It also features rain gardens and stormwater planters, as well as constructed wetlands and native plantings that enhance water quality. Amenities include a playground, an aeration fountain, a great lawn, a market plaza, and an amphitheater stage. This dual-purpose park and watershed management project alleviate flooding while creating a vibrant community destination, ultimately acting as a catalyst for neighborhood revitalization.
You know, this is amazing because I really do think it's one of the most beautiful parks I've ever seen. Not only the network of bridges going over the catchment pool, but the playstations for almost every age. I mean, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren can go there and play, and it's not like it was when I came down a slide in my neighborhood. I was usually on rocks and mud. This has a, what kind of cushion is that? Those, I mean, it's
got
almost
a lot
like
of
they
rubber.
fall, if they fall on foam rubber.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
And it has the-
Andy's talking about the Delta Airlines playground, and so it's a cushion
Right.
of rubber, and you bounce when you fall.
It reminds me of Centennial Park because you have the splash, you know, the water jets coming up, and I live around the corner from the park on Sunset, right across from the National, the Health Union, and one thing, and y'all get ready for the Trinity video. One thing we draw a lot of inspiration at the Westside Future Fund, we have as our vision statement, how do you develop a community Dr. King we're proud to call home? Because we kind of take as our North Star, if he was,
Well, when he moved, Dr. King's original home was on Johnson Avenue,
Right.
which is now where the Presidential Parkway goes.
Right.
And he moved there, and I wanted to move there too, but those houses were $40,000. And I didn't have that much money. The other house I was looking at happened to be right there near Morris Brown Stadium, and it was an older house, but it had the best view of the city of almost any place in town. You see the full city skyline from the west side. But that too was upwards of $40,000. So I went out to Cascade to the cheaper neighborhood. And the reason that neighborhood is so expensive though, and so valuable, is it's still walking. Well, over here, you're walking distance from Georgia Tech. Downtown, I mean, any closer left, you're almost walking distance from Emory Hospital, Midtown.
Yeah, and I'm a half a mile from downtown from my house.
Yeah, and the same thing is true of Grady.
Right.
On the southwest side, that this is a perfectly located neighborhood.
No,
And
it
John,
isn't.
also because the National Park Service, we were helpful and instrumental with the
Right.
King children to have them buy Dr. King's house at 234
Right.
Sunset and a few other buildings. Andy always wanted to live on Sunset, and Andy, we might be able to make a deal right now because John's organization has some property there, and I've tried to compel Andy to let me move his house to Sunset Avenue as a part of that
You're right.
ensemble.
If Ambassador's interested, he has an amazing trump card. But what Rodney's referring to, Ambassador, and it was thank you for your leadership on the 234, is when the Park Service also going to buy 220 Sunset right next door.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood rose up and said, wait a second, y'all might not remember the history, but Maynard's father built that house. And he lived there until he was 13. And so the neighborhood Vine City leadership said, we really want to preserve that for that, because the Park Service, I think, was planning to do something different with it. So we stepped in.
And then Julian Bond lived 2 or 3 houses
Yes,
down.
sir. So the West.
When I moved here, though, there were some phenomenal scholars
Right.
on Sunset. I think W.E.B. Du Bois lived on Sunset.
Because his office is right down the street.
And Walter White,
Right.
who was one of the first presidents of the NAACP. Everybody lived on Sunset.
Well, that's it, Theo, because one thing we wanted to show you to make sure, because you were asking earlier about the work of the Westside Future Fund, show you a young video of a woman named Trinity. I met Trinity. She has a lemonade stand in English Avenue, and she's quite the entrepreneur. She goes to the Hollis Innovation Academy. She's in the Booker T. Washington cluster, but she draws a lot of inspiration from the work that you and others did. Could y'all show that video? Ready to?
Hi, I'm Trinity. I'm 10 years old, and when I grow up, I want to be a lawyer. This is where I live on the west side of Atlanta. Water soda lemonade. A lot of people who changed the world grew up in my neighborhood. This is Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark, where Alice Walker, Spike Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, Stacey Abrams, and Dr. King went to college. Down the street from my house is Dr. Martin Luther King House. This is the house where he raised his family, and when I grow up, I want to change the world, just like he did. I want people to feel loved and care. I want them to be happy and smile every day they wake up.
Trinity is a 4th grade student here at Hollis Innovation Academy. She has a spunk, a little chutzpah, if you will. Entrepreneurship apparently runs in her veins. One of the things that I think is reflected in Trinity is a desire to do excellent things in the face of tremendous adversity. This is a historic part of the city. It is the birthplace of civil rights. And what I recognize about the west side of Atlanta that's different than others is that you can go down streets that have major names of people who have made impacts on the city of Atlanta and nationally. But I still see that a lot of our children may engage people who already have a perceived idea about who they are based off of the color of their skin, where they're from, the clothes that they wear, and not really take the time to get to know who they are as a person.
We want to make the West Side a great place for Trinity and her family by delivering on those things that deliver quality of life and deliver economic opportunity. So that's high quality public education through the Booker T. Washington cluster, health and wellness through great parks and access to high quality medical care. That is, cradle to career. So the things we try to deliver on for Trinity, health and wellness, public safety, and a quality education and career training so she can kind of have the life that she wants. She has ownership of her destiny. When she can say what she is choosing to do next and has ownership of her destiny, I think that's a community Dr. King would be proud to call home.
I'm really thankful to the Westside Future Fund because they're making my neighborhood a neighborhood that Dr. King will be proud to call home.
So thank you, because that, for me, and you saw for Trinity, that the history, all the people that came before us, continues to inspire.
And John, that's a beautiful video. There's another young lady I would like to highlight, Makeda Johnson's daughter, Sarah, and she was on top of the Millennium Gate when we were first proposing the park. Andy knows Makeda well, and it was 4th of July, and we had a lot of the community on the roof of our building where you can see a dozen fireworks displays. And so Sarah, I said, what do you think about this park we're going to build together? And your mom's really helping me. And we're going to have plaques on top of the column that you'll be able to look out and see. There's the Fox Theater, and there's Dr. King's house, and there's W.B. Du Bois's house, Maynard's house. And we're going to highlight how your neighborhood changed the world. And what do you think? And she said, Mr. Cook, I want to make sure you know one of those plaques will be pointing at my house.
Wow.
And this young woman is now at Berkeley and getting her PhD. I'm really proud of her.
Wow.
Very good.
Well, you know, we're almost, I imagine Ambassador and Rodney have other appointments today, so I want to make sure we don't go too late. But maybe as our last question, Ambassador, was one I was reflecting on, because you heard us kind of pivoting off of, you know, what Dr. King would say if he was to walk out on his porch at 2:34. You know, if he were to still alive and come out on his porch with his wife, Credit, if they were to, you know, based on all the time you spent with him, if he was to extort us to say, these are the must that, like, what do you think he might say? You know, because I think he'd be very happy to literally walk around the corner and be at the park, because that's right around the corner from 2:30. Like, what do you think he might challenge us today?
Well, I think that, well, because I'm thinking that, I think he would think that. I think when he went to Oglethorpe Elementary School and Booker T. Washington High School, they were amongst the top schools in the country. He finished high school and started college at 15, as did Maynard. Maynard started at 14. And it was because we had good preschool. I learned to read and write in a church nursery school. And I always regretted it, but it was probably good for me in the long run, that when they put me in public schools at 6 years old, they put me in 3rd grade. Well, it meant that I was always a hellraiser, because it was easier to get along with the teachers than the kids. And that was always my priority. That maybe made me a politician. But I think that the key to the West Side is education. Those historically black universities, when you can walk from Georgia State to Morehouse and Spelman and Clark and Morris Brown, and you can walk also to Georgia Tech. This is one of the premier academic communities in the world. And Georgia State has at least 200 different nationalities in school there. And the Andrew Young School of Public Policy just graduated. I mean, they've graduated 50,000 students with graduate degrees. But we've got to put a little more emphasis, a lot more emphasis. And I would call on the business community to adopt a school.
Yes, sir.
That my son is, he was never a good student, because he said he had to get along with the students and they could hurt him more than the teachers could. But the things that he remembers, a lawyer coming to school to talk about what a lawyer does and dividing the class into a courtroom and a banker and business people. And so he always wanted to go into business. I think that the emphasis you put on entrepreneurialism and the Herman Russell Institute, I don't know whether that's what it's called, but that's what I think of it as. Because Herman Russell had a lemonade stand and a shoe shine stand and sold shoestrings and chewing gum when he was 12 years old. He also ended up probably one of the richest black entrepreneurs in the South. I think that pathway to wealth and culture Southwest had one of the best bands, as did Booker T. Washington. The educational and cultural opportunities here, the dramatics of the Alliance Theater and the High Museum.
Right.
All of those things are part of the education system. Right now, I don't think, because of COVID, I don't think they're integrated enough. And so I would like to close by my statement by saying that that's where I would like to see us concentrate in the Westside Future Fund.
Education.
Yeah.
And
thank
John,
you.
also, Andy's building is going to house a great deal of things, much less part of his archive that'll be in the south part of the park.
Right.
Have decks underneath it to alleviate some of the traffic going to the King House.
Okay.
And then we've got 8 foreign institutes of peace that will be moving into the Georgia Nobel Peace Pantheon. If Georgia were a nation, we'd be number 5 in Nobel Peace Laureates.
Wow.
And to follow up with your question, Bernice King was very helpful to us with the 234 issue. She said, if my father was standing at the front door of this house and could look that way and see a statue of him in a domed Nobel Peace Pavilion, he would never have believed it. It'll be right on a perch overlooking the city. It'll be breathtaking and house all of these peace institutes underneath it.
Well, thank you, Rodney, for your leadership. And as wrap up, the businesses, led some of our most notable business leaders in the work have been, Mr. Arthur Blank and Dan Cathy, and we do have a partnership with the Booker T. Washington Cluster where, NCR, Truist, the Coca-Cola Company, and others are investing in the whole cluster. We need to do more. We've had a good start, and I also want to say these Transform Westside Summits were originally a brainchild of Dan Cathy.
Yeah.
And when he first brought it up, I remember he said 7:15 before people have to go to work, and I had just started, and I was like, that's twice a month, really? But it was a brilliant idea, because his idea was get everyone together, start with a devotion to level set, but really it grew into, and Rodney, you were there in the early days, the first meetings were kind of tense people to know each other, because you had people from the community, people from outside, but a core set of people just kept showing up, and it really built a lot of trust, because people just came time after time. But Dan couldn't, and we hope to be back in person, because that's really the purpose of some people, to get to know each other. But he couldn't be here, but he came by early. And he knew it was your 90th birthday, so he left at Chick-fil-A. He had a Atlanta Committee for Progress meeting this morning, so he had to go to that. But he wanted me to make sure that he came by to make sure you knew he had his birthday wish.
Very good.
And we really thank you. And I know all the information on your Peace Walk and your birthday activities are up on the internet. And Ambassador and Rodney, we're going to let y'all get on with your day. And I want to just say, and I mentioned this to Rodney, part of the reason I'm here today is thanks to you, because I was on the Olympic elevator when I worked for the Olympics, and you looked at my name tag, and I thought I was in trouble because I didn't know you, and you said, do you know Matt Ahmann? And I said, well, yes, sir, that's my uncle. And you said, well, he used to march with us so he wouldn't get killed. And I was a little estranged from my father's family, and I went and did the research, and I'm like, wow, how involved he was. And that just got me on the path I'm in today. So in a way, I'm at this seat today because of some of the words you said many years ago. So thank you for being here today, and thank you, Rodney, for making this happen. All right, so we're gonna just wrap up our show and let y'all if y'all want to help the ambassador get back into his.
I'm okay.
Yeah. And then I think we're gonna let Ebony and Benjamin come back up in just a second. We want to announce our gift card winners. We have gift card winners from the Home Depot Foundation and from Goodwill. So Trinity and Benjamin will be coming back up to announce those 2 winners and just do our show closeout. And we want to thank the ambassador again today for being here with us. And hopefully everyone who watched was inspired, to go on his peace walk. And that'll be next Wednesday. And I'm being coached by people, so we're as we do our wrap up. All right.
Thank you so much again to our esteemed guests, Ambassador Andrew Young and Rodney Cook Jr. We appreciate the conversation. John, thank you for doing a wonderful job anchoring that conversation. And, you know, just reflecting a little bit on what Ambassador Young was talking about, especially in terms of Southwest Atlanta. You know, my grandmother, who I speak about a lot at these summits, used to teach at a school called Southwest High School. Over the years, the school changed names. Eventually, my siblings and I attended that same school, and it was then Jean Childs Young Middle School. And it was named after the late wife of Ambassador Young. And so it's been a full circle moment for me to be able to share this experience with Ambassador Young and being able to connect several dots as far as, you know, being a black Atlantan and a black man growing up on the west side of Atlanta. Absolutely. And seeing some of the things that he has put so much effort into helping to mitigate throughout his time, and is helping to inspire so many people my age now to carry that torch forward. And so it's truly a humbling experience to be here with Ambassador Young this morning. And that being said, I do want to draw attention to the fact that we are giving away 2 gift cards today, Ms. Ebony Ford.
Yes, we are. It is time for the Home Depot Foundation and Goodwill of North Georgia drawing winners. We do appreciate everything that Home Depot is doing, partnering with Westside Future Fund. They have invested and are still investing tens of millions of dollars that is going toward the revitalization of the West Side, and we really appreciate them for that, as always. And they are also giving something else away today, a gift card, and the winner of that gift card is Miss Justine Robinson. So congratulations, Miss Robinson. I appreciate you being here with us this morning. And Goodwill of North Georgia has entered the chat. About a year ago, I think they started giving away a gift card as well, and we appreciate them. They are building a new store and career center on Metropolitan Parkway that should be done sometime a little bit later this year. So we're definitely looking forward to that addition to our community. And for the gift card winner for the Goodwill of North Georgia is Miss Latice Wallace. So again, congratulations to Miss Robinson and Miss Wallace, and I definitely appreciate both of you for being here with us today.
All right, congrats again to our gift card winners, and appreciate Goodwill North Georgia and Home Depot Foundation for their amazing contributions. A quick reminder before we wrap up, Westside Future Fund's PRI program, that's the Programs Related Investments program, is up and running, and the deadline is May 31st. The PRI program provides funding and financial relief for historic West Side businesses, minority-owned businesses, black-owned businesses on the historic West Side. If you have a business, if you are running it on the West Side, if you know of a person who is doing the same, please have them apply for the PRI program. We are helping to sustain and helping these businesses to thrive in an environment where they are more critical than ever. Black business is a beacon for black excellence. It is a foundation to improve the quality of life for the entire black community, especially here in the hub of the civil rights movement. It's more important now than ever to make sure that we have black equity and access to capital for our black entrepreneurs. So please apply for the PRI program. Again, the deadline is May 31st, and a special thank you to Truist, AT&T, and PNC Bank for making this effort possible. You can apply at westsidefuturefund.com/PRI. That being said, we're going to go ahead and wish you all a beautiful and happy rest of your weekend. Thank you again for spending your morning with us. Thank you for tuning in. For those who have joined us for the very first time this morning, we appreciate your presence. Hope you come back. We'll be back again 2 weeks from today at the next virtual Transform Westside Summit. Until then, y'all be easy. We appreciate you.
Here we go, at the top of the class on a roll, and it's time to run it up, yeah you know. Maxed out, put the pedal to the floor, ayy, on the road, here we go. Yeah, we winning by a landslide. Never see me coming, I'm a landmine. Yeah, I ain't taking orders in command like, yeah, you about to see me on demand like, you know on demand. If you ain't know, you about to understand. Yeah, I got the team by my side, right hand. Yeah, take it to a string, you ain't seen it like that. Yeah, and it's the dream, and we coming for the bag. Yeah, and we ain't never going back now. Future expedited, now we on the fast track now. They won't lend a hand, now they see us on the map now. It's time to act out. Here we go, at the top of the class on a roll, and it's time to run it up, yeah you know. Maxed out, put the pedal to the floor.